This is a somewhat confusing presentation. We're hoping that Tom, who lives on an island, will be able to stay connected with us. So good evening, everybody. I'm Barbara Peters from The Poison Pen, and with us tonight is Thomas Kies, the author of Random Road and 2 successive books and yet a 4th that we'll publish, he tells me now, in August, all about a reporter called Geneva Chase, who is hoping to stay relevant and employed in the newspaper and whatever industry that's morphing into. So Tom, you come from a background in all of that. You obviously are writing from a position of having been through it, or at least knowing what's going on.
Yeah, I was in newspapers and magazines for over 30 years, and I've seen the best days of newspapers, and I've seen the decline of newspapers, and I've actually written a number of columns about it. It's pretty sad, really. It was a business I absolutely loved to be in, and Geneva Chase is somebody who has ink in her veins, but the business is changing, so I'm afraid that Geneva has to change along with it.
Well, absolutely true. I mean, there are corporate buyouts. In fact, we can see in the live news what's going on with Tribune newspapers, for example, and hedge funds and other things acquiring papers and making cost cuts, and which is what you write about in part, what Geneva's up against. But when we meet her in Random Road, she is still working for the Sheffield print paper. Is it the Courier? Is that the name of it? Well, we've lost him again. I think it is the Sheffield Courier, and Geneva has a couple of very difficult challenges in her life. Actually, 3. One is her job as a reporter and the newspaper industry's changing around her. Second, she's an alcoholic, and she has drunk herself out of several plumbier jobs. And so the Sheffield Courier is really kind of the last stop. She either needs to make it at the Courier, or who knows what will actually happen to her. And third, her personal life as a consequence is in disarray, but she's back.
Is she a crime reporter, I'm assuming?
Yeah. Well, she's an investigative reporter, like our own much loved Robert Englund, for example. Good news there, by the way, while we're talking, I'm booking Don Winslow for a new book this fall. And Robert, as you know, is a Winslow fan. So that'll be fun to see that. So Tom, I was just talking about Geneva and the challenges that she has faced, not only with the newspaper industry, but with alcoholism and her personal life not being great. But and the fact that the Courier is really the last, is it the Courier?
It's the Sheffield Post.
Post, thank you. All right, well, Courier Post, they all kind of come together. Anyway, that this is kind of her last stop. If she blows this assignment, then it will be difficult, I think, for her to, you thought anyway, not I think, for her to continue. So I must say that when you submitted this book to Poison Pen Press some years ago, and I acquired it, it was because I was absolutely blown away by the entire plot. It was so original, so unexpected, and in many ways really grim, but the grim part is mostly off the page. So, while the murders of the 6 people that are discovered early on in the book in this beautiful Gold Coast mansion. In fact, I remember writing this copy for it, and it said, "It's a crime scene worthy of Hieronymus Bosch, so shocking and so senseless, it challenges the local law and intrigues veteran reporter Geneva Chase, whose career may be dying, alongside that of her small newspaper." So with a crime like that, a sensational crime like that, it's a golden opportunity for her, which is a horrible way to look at it, but nonetheless realistic. This is a big story, right? Could be even a national story.
Yeah, well, of course, she's blown every job that she's had other than this one, and she's back in her hometown. And she wants to get back into the major metros, and this is her chance. And she's the first on the scene. So if she can stay sober long enough and stay out of trouble and not get killed along the way, this could put her back in the game.
Right. So her role as an investigative journalist, a very hungry investigative journalist, is really ideal for someone, for a protagonist in a crime novel. You don't have to follow police procedure because she's not a cop. Um, and so she can take some shortcuts and do some chances investigating this crime. But tell us about where it's located, because a big part of this book is the location of Sheffield and the scene of the crime.
It's set in Fairfield County, Connecticut, which is about 30 miles out of Manhattan. And you have some of the wealthiest enclaves in America there. You've got Greenwich and Westport and Wilton. But you've got some real pockets of poverty too. The poorest city in the entire state of Connecticut is Bridgeport, and it's located in Fairfield. And actually, in Fairfield has had some pretty horrific crimes in real life as well. The Jennifer Doolittle story has been front and center. It was a housewife who went missing, and her estranged husband was thought to be the killer, and then he committed suicide. So it's you've got some strange murders that happen there.
Well, you do. I like the way the Sheffield Post, Geneva's, not the Courier, the Post, sorry about that. The headline shouts, "Cops call murder scene slaughterhouse." And when she's there, she spurs the deputy police chief of the town to tell her quietly, 6 bodies, all nude, hacked to pieces. And so it really is a scene as though somebody like Bosch had set it up. For those of you who don't know, Hieronymus Bosch, Michael Connelly based his own character on this artist, but he painted surreal and often very peculiar, but arresting, colorful. I've seen a lot of Bosch paintings in Europe. Whoop, we've lost him again. A lot of Bosch paintings in Europe, and some of the scenes you can, if you know Bosch. I think if you know Bosch, Tom, that it's easy to see why that description fits. Are you familiar with his paintings? Is that something you consciously did?
Yeah, and they are absolutely horrific. That's one of the reasons why I decided to use Hieronymus Bosch in the very first sentence of the book, which, by the way, that sentence won a prize at Thriller Fest for best first sentence for a novel.
That's exciting. And I should mention that when this book published in May of, what was it, 2018, I think?
2017.
2017, Library Journal made it their mystery of the month, their debut mystery of the month, which is really terrific. So the book had lots of recognition, but what we're talking about right now is the new edition that has been published, and Patrick has it with him, and it has some new material in it, which I think is really an interesting way to introduce readers to it. So Tom, tell us a little bit about the new material in Random Road.
Oh,
Gone again. All right, Patrick, tell us a little bit about the new material in Random Road. I feel like an idiot talking for Tom, but what can we do?
yeah. Let's see. Well, for one thing, it hasn't. Here he's coming back, so he'll be able to let us know.
Okay.
But it has an excerpt from the forthcoming book, Darkness Lane. Let's see if he comes back here.
There he is.
We'll have him and his doppelganger on the screen at the same time.
Excellent.
I will say every time my screen freezes, I take a drink of wine. So by the end of this, I'll probably be smashed.
Well, I could match you on that, kiddo. Here we are, right? So to you,
Cheers.
Lovely to see you. So I was saying that this new edition, which is up, from 2017 to 2021, the book itself hasn't changed, but there's new material in it, which is ripe for discussion and introduction to this series. So what's new in it, Tom, and what part of it did you write yourself?
I wrote the introduction, and they actually have an interview where they created the questions and I gave them answers, and there's a reader's guide specifically for book clubs. So there's some fun additions in it. It was, and of course, your first child is always your favorite. I absolutely love Random Road. It'll always probably be my favorite book.
Well, I think it's terrific. I mean, I really like Darkness Lane, the sequel, and remind me the title of the third book, because at my age, I can't remember titles anymore.
That's fine. It was Graveyard Bay.
Graveyard Bay, right. And what's the title of the one coming out in August?
Shadow Hill.
Okay, so you do like place names as part of your title, don't you?
I do, because they're kind of punchy and short, and they're fun to try to figure out a title. And then actually, Shadow Hill, most of the time I have a title before I have a book, but with Shadow Hill, I had a book almost before I had a title.
Wow. Well, I mean, why not shake up your shake up your routine, do something different? Random Road is one of my favorite books that we ever published, because I thought it was such an interesting crime and so arresting the way the investigation went. And I wish we could talk about the denouement, but obviously we can't do that. But it also is a terrific book for book clubs because of Geneva and, you know, her set of problems, the bad choices that she's made, the chances that she may be earning in this book, you know, to start a different life, a better life, if she manages to hold it together. And there's some on her personal side. We're not just talking about her career as a reporter, which is going to be affected, but in her personal life, she's on her own. I mean, living with an alcoholic can be dangerous, right? So you've given her an interesting situation, which I'm trying to remember. It continues in Darkness Lane and Graveyard Bay, and that she acquires something of a family in this. Right. Do we have any questions, Patrick, that have come in that we could answer while Tom comes back?
No, one of his friends, somebody who knows him, just says, "Hey, Tom." I think this is just one of those this plagued programs that we may have to do over, don't you think, at some point?
Well, we would, but he probably is going to need to be somewhere not on island, but with a stronger connection. Internet is very shaky in a lot of remote places. Tom lives on a offshore island, and I'm sure that the connectivity also is a function of weather, but various other things. So yeah, we can redo it.
Yeah.
But I mean, part of the point, of course, was you know, to mention why there is a new edition, which is that there's a lot of enthusiasm for the whole series, and to give it a fresh start and boot up more enthusiasm, there is this new edition with new material, which is not true just of Random Road, but in fact, there are several other Poison Pen Press authors who have new editions of their books. I'll be talking tomorrow to Jeffrey Seiger, and there is a new edition of Murder in Mykonos for him. And then I'll be talking to David Wagner as well, and his first book also has a new edition. So, you know, I think it's a good program for introducing readers who may have missed these authors to a new audience. Right.
Tom, I have a question for you, Tom. It just in this brief gap of time, 2017 to 2021, what kind of, I mean, in 2017, there was this thought in the newspaper business, okay, how is this all going to shake down? You know, we were already going largely onto digital, but even in these intervening years, what kind of shifts have taken place that you've noticed, and has it kind of stabilized in some way? No,
Especially since the pandemic hit. The advertising was moving to the internet. Actually, it started in the Great Recession. It started really heavily. And then during the pandemic, a lot of stores and shops and restaurants just completely shut down, and they weren't advertising at all. So the page count in local newspapers has substantially declined. There's been a couple of exceptions, and that was the Washington Post, the New York Times, have done quite well during the pandemic, just simply because they've really embraced paid subscriptions on the internet and have done exceedingly well. It's just the local newspapers that I'm really concerned about.
Well, we certainly notice it here. We used to get our morning newspapers, the Arizona Republic and the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. So that's the whole spectrum, right? And they would they would be out there in the driveway and each one would be in its own bag, red, white, and blue, so you could tell them apart. And now, most of the time, the Journal and the Republic, because we each just get the Times for the 3 weekend things, they're all in one little bag because the papers, even the Journal, has become so thin that that they fit right in. So I think you're right that local papers, although the Arizona Republic is part of Gannett, so it's not totally local.
Gannett, my first job was with a Gannett paper, and Gannett was like the king. And right now, Gannett has been sold a couple of times. So even they've gone through shifts in how they do business.
Right. Well, I mean, I can't find any better way to start my morning than with a cup of coffee and a newspaper. Although I do subscribe to the Washington Post electronically. I also subscribe to the Guardian and trying to think whether it's the Times of London. I think I do have subscriptions to those. I like reading the news. I've never been one to listen to television and pundits in the morning news. I really like digesting it and long form, and it gives me a lot of things to talk about when talking to authors. There's often stuff in the news when you have time to read a column and digest it that we can throw into these conversations because there's so little time you can really talk about a book when we're doing this without spoiling it, that you need to talk about other issues. But strangely enough, and I've asked you this before, why did you choose to make Geneva, well, why did you choose to write a woman rather than a man as your reporter?
It was an experiment. I wrote one chapter as Geneva Chase, one chapter as Kevin Bell, another chapter as Geneva Chase, and another chapter as Kevin Bell. And Kevin's a nice guy, but Geneva Chase is a smartass, and she says things that I can't get away with. So I adore her. She is a crackerjack to write, and a delight to be with in my head. So yeah, I mean, she's fun.
Where did the name come from?
What? I'm sorry?
Where did the name come from?
I wanted some kind of like kind of an action last name. Chase seemed to work out real well. Geneva is actually a town in upstate New York. And I just always thought Geneva would be a pretty name. And, you shorten it to Jeannie, it's cool.
It is cool. It's a town in Wisconsin too, or Lake Geneva in Wisconsin anyway. No, I like it. I like it as a name. I know you and I had some editorial discussions over your first 3 books because sometimes she would say things that I pointed out to you I didn't really think that a woman would actually say, so we changed some of that up. But it is interesting. I think that the issues you give her to deal with work better for a female lead than they would work for a man. I mean, there's a real cliche about, the alcoholic male reporter or alcoholic male private eye. And, they tend to muscle along and not have real relationships and not worry if they have children and stuff like that. So by by the fact that she's a woman, I think gives you a chance to explore her in a personal way that would be very different if she were a guy.
Yeah. And it makes me look at things with a whole different mindset. I always say that in order to write like a woman, I have to be very observant and listen to how women talk and how they move and how they dress. But I also say, there's one thing about being observant and there's another about being creepy. So I kind of walk that fine line.
Good move. So since I know you, I can say that, you're not personally that well acquainted with alcohol, but how did you decide to write authentically about what it would be like to be either a dry or a wet alcoholic, because she is both in these books?
Yeah. Like I said, I've worked at newspapers for 30 years and I've worked with a lot of folks at a lot of different newspapers, and cigarettes and alcohol that was a big deal in my days in the newspapers. And I've known men who have been alcoholics at newspapers, and I've known women who have been alcoholics, and some of them they're dear people. They're wonderful folks. They have this monkey on their back. And it's just like I say, newspapers and drinking. It was a big deal. I don't think it's like that anymore. I think it's more like a business. It's become very sterile.
Well, I couldn't speak to that. I was thinking about Mad Men, because the advertising, well, but I mean, seriously, and I find it kind of unnerving to watch programs that are set back in the 50s and stuff and watching everybody smoke. I also watch a lot of European television and, not only are they smoking, but I really dislike the way they litter. They're always flinging their cigarette stuff on the ground and whatever. And, I feel as though I've evolved, in a lot of ways. And I find that seriously annoying. But we also haven't talked about Geneva in her personal life. She's had a long-term, well, she has a relationship with a lawyer, a married lawyer, that is not good for her, but she doesn't seem to be able to, that addiction, along with her addiction to alcohol, is the other thing that plagues her and makes it really difficult for her to have any kind of reasonable personal life.
Yeah, she's a handful. And one I've known people who have had affairs, and it's once again, it's hard to fault them. They just have this flaw. They have a bit of a self-esteem problem, I think, or even a commitment problem. If they're with somebody who's married, they don't really have to commit to that individual. That individual is always also they're committed to somebody else. So once again, Geneva is just a hot mess when you meet her in Random Road, and she does straighten herself up a little bit as the books progress. She matures.
Well, she does. And, you're not judgmental. I think that's one of the things I like about the book is that you present her, warts and all, but you're not judgmental about her. And also, I think the pressures of a job like that, the weird hours that you have to keep, the like constant summons jerking you away from ordinary life and so forth to chase the story, would make all of that, would keep you in that lane more, grabbing drinks with your colleagues, having hot sex with somebody, in the middle of something like that, would be a lot different than if you had, a 9-to-5 job doing something else. The rhythms of that life are more conducive to the kinds of things that Geneva does than if she were like a school teacher or something of the sort, where your life is more parsed and more accountable.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure to working in a newsroom or a newspaper, almost in any department, and you become very close to the people that you work with. There's a lot of tension because you're working on deadlines, but there's a lot of camaraderie as well, and you grow very close to these folks. I haven't been in the newspaper business for 12 years at this point in time, but I'm still very close to the folks that I work with back there.
Well, you're involved with your local chamber of commerce, so maybe that too is a hotbed of intrigue. And, who knows? You may be able to write the definitive murder at the chamber or something of the sort. Because isn't it interesting how, like, an HOA board or a country club board or chamber of commerce board, I've observed this over, my long life. It brings out, there's always like somebody who finds it a power trip, no matter, it could be a condo building in New York where it's really interesting how it brings out some people's desire to exert power over other people or control things or impose their vision of how it should go. So I'm not surprised that the newspaper business would do that too. Patrick, are there any questions that have shown up?
Let's see here. No question, but Philip Booth, he says, Tom, I was just talking to someone yesterday about how colleagues were smoking in the newsroom at my first paper job in 1983, Winter Haven, Florida.
Yeah, I'll tell this. I used to be a 2-pack-a-day smoker and quit back in 1995. And at a newspaper, the first thing that you would see in the morning is everybody would light up almost at the same time. There'd be so much smoke going up to the ceiling, it would look like a forest fire had just started. I can remember I had this big glass ashtray sitting on my desk, and it was just, that's what everybody did. And then when they started making people stand outside to smoke, the smokers, it was like being in a little club. And then at one point in time, you figured, well, I'm killing myself here, so I'm not going to do this anymore. And even around here, there aren't a whole lot of smokers anymore. It's something that people finally wised up to.
How
Right.
did
Well,
the sound of the newsroom change from your earliest days?
Oh God, when I first started working at newspapers, it was they were just transferring from hot lead, that shows you how old I am, to cold type. And we still had the tape machines in the back of the newsroom. And right up until uh, even at the time that I left back in 2003, I think it is, um, we still had presses. And the most impressive thing, I never got over this. I would go out to the press room and watch the press running, and it just seemed like the biggest machine in the
right. Well,
world.
the presses are amazing because they are so noisy. And they can actually make a whole building shake. It's very exciting.
Whole building would vibrate,
Almost.
and you see the newspapers coming off. I was, uh,
He's almost back.
Almost, but not quite. Right. I think really, in all fairness, that we might want to reconsider another time when Tom is in a better location, because I don't think that there's a lot more we can do. It's always a pleasure for me to talk to Tom. I'm a raging enthusiast for Random Road, Darkness Lane, Graveyard Bay, and I haven't yet read the new book, Shadow Hill. Although actually, I think I did read it as a manuscript. But anyway, I love this series. I think Tom's done a wonderful job with it. Geneva's a really interesting character. And even if you disapprove or dislike her a little bit for some of her choices, as Tom says, she's matured over the series. Right. So we were just saying, Tom, that we thought maybe at some point, let's talk about August when we could do another one. And maybe you just need to move ashore.
I can actually do this at my office onshore. So that's what we'll do next time.
Okay, I think if we reprise this in August, then if you do that, it'll be better because it won't cut in and cut out. So I thank any of you who joined us to watch this, and stick around in August, pay attention, and we'll be back. So thanks, Tom, very much. It was lovely to see you. Patrick, thank you. And I will see you at 6 when Lee Child is interviewing DJ Palmer this evening. And that should be a really interesting conversation too. So Tom, congratulations. It's wonderful to have a book twice. Wow, not everybody gets to do that. So that's very impressive. And I do think the presentation
Thank you.
is really great with the added material. And also it has a very different look. So very arresting look. So you will like that. Great. Bye. Hello. We hope you're enjoying our programs and podcasts with authors. We'd like to expand them, and your help would be appreciated. Please make a donation at poisonedpenfoundation.org. 100% of the proceeds will go to help connect authors with readers in this difficult time. Thank you.